Hello and welcome to the Engineer Exchange, a podcast where we share experiences, insights and knowledge with experts in the industry.
For Men's Health Week, we're joined by 4 experts to discuss their experiences with mental health, focusing on men's mental health within construction. Trigger warning, we may be discussing topics around mental illness and suicide, so please listen with caution if you are affected by these topics.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Hayley.
And we are your podcast hosts today. We're joined by our 4 guests. We have 3 people from our organisation and we have a special guest as well. So I'll let them introduce themselves. We'll start with you, Matt, if that's okay.
Hi, so my name's Matt, George Harthill. George is my nickname, guys. A lot of people in Birmingham know me as George, so that's another story there. I work for Linden SGB by brand Safway and I'm head of the wellbeing and mental health support there. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vicky Procter and I'm the Mental Health and Wellbeing Consultant at Watermill Aspen and I live local in Birmingham.
I'm Josh Garbutt, live in Teesside and I'm an advocate for men's mental health as well. Also worked for Watermill Aspen for about 2 years now.
I'm Dan O'Neill. I've been with Waterman's coming up for 16 years now. Quite a while and I work over in the East Midlands. It's a lovely place to work.
Brilliant. Okay, well, let's get started. Thank you. So, first question, what are some of the societal expectations of men and how can this impact a man's mental health? We'll start with Josh.
I think some of the societal implications with men, we're told to man up, and I think that throughout generations, like I go with the example of my father, and he was told to man up by his father, and my grandfather was obviously part of like a war generation. I think the messages that have been passed down, I think there's a bit of a disconnect. I think we're getting told to man up and it's not necessarily about manning up. It's about you're actually more of a man for talking. I think there's more to it than just manning up.
Yeah, I think it's about changing that attitude, isn't it? What do you think, Vicky?
Yeah, very much so. I hear it quite a lot really and it's that big barrier, isn't it, between actually going out and speaking and asking for help or the embarrassment and stigma by, actually, I'd rather just stay silent. I can't be judged and therefore I can't be hurt if I stay silent. But it's what's going on internally. That's the problem, isn't it then?
Yeah. Do you think things like TV and media have a role to play in that, in terms of how men are portrayed on the TV and in movies and things like that?
Yeah, I think it's a big part. All of it. We're all the products of our environment, aren't we, from where we grow up? That's what you were saying there about your grandparents and your dad was saying to man up. And I used to teach martial arts at Fury MMA in Stourbridge and I used to use that all the time to everybody. It wasn't gender specific. I used to say man up. I used to do it at work, man up. It wasn't until I went off the rails a few years ago where I started realising, imagine you're having a bad day and then somebody saying to you, man up. And then you're already feeling probably one of the worst days that you're having in your life, and then somebody says to you, "What do you just man up?" Well, what is man up? Mm-hmm. What is man up?
Yeah.
You know,
what does that mean?
Does that mean I can't talk about how I'm feeling? All these emotions inside. Do I have to just clam it up? Is that what being a man up is? Yeah. I don't know. And it's all badness. And then when you talk about TV and society, maybe I think it's got a good part of it. But look at it now. Look at it, how far it's gone now. So 5-6 years ago, I wouldn't have spoken about this openly. And here we are, we're having a podcast now in 2024 and we're talking about mental health, men's mental health. It's 1,000,000 times better than what it was, but it's got such a further way to go, I think.
Doesn't it? Yeah. I think media as well. I've just noticed there's this big thing, I think, at the minute where there's an awful lot of series and films at the moment that are putting women in lead roles. I've noticed, but what they seem to be doing in contrast is making men look weaker. And it really grates on my nerves, and I just think it makes me feel uncomfortable to watch sometimes, to see that. And I don't think it's deliberately done that way. It's just the way they're writing things to make men look weaker. It drives me mad.
I think it's hard to strike the balance, isn't it? Because obviously for many years women maybe weren't in those roles. Now people are trying to address that by putting women in those roles, but then
it's changing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's changing the balance.
Yeah.
The thing is, men want to feel masculine. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. And I think that's the problem, that this manning up weakness, it's different from just being masculine. I think there's still a place in the world for men to be manly men, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's nothing toxic, nothing wrong with that. but there needs to be a line as well for a man to think, well, I'm just as manly for crying and talking to someone about how I feel. There's many sportsmen who I've listened to podcasts over the years. 5 times Mr. Olympia, Christopher Bumstead, he did a podcast and he said he broke down with his wife after he won Mr. Olympia, and he is the alpha male. He won Mr. Olympia and he doesn't have it all together, so it's one of the things.
So how do you think societal sort of expectations have changed over the generation? I know you touched on earlier, Josh, about like how it sort of was almost passed down. Like, not passed down, but like, it's almost like generational trauma sometimes. And it's like, how do you break that cycle? So like, Dan, what do you think? Like, how do you think it's changed maybe over time?
It's quite funny because I can only sort of like say my own experience. I grew up sort of like taking in everything in the 70s. So the 70s was sort of like not peak masculinity, but it was very sort of like... I'm going to use colognes, high karate, Old Spice, if we use it like that way. Whereas you get through to the 80s, it's becoming a little bit more, not what do I think I smell like, what do other people sort of like think? And how do I react to other people? How do they behave with me? Through the 90s, we had that little bit about people becoming a little bit more softened around the edges. And then we sort of like had the Metro male, and sort of I was quite lucky that I'd gone from a generation of dads that were afraid, or it wasn't seen, to push your kids around in prams. One of the greatest things that I used to enjoy was actually getting the pram, taking my son out, feeding him in public, and being what I call a proper parent. Now, that's something that my dad's generation wouldn't have done. That wasn't Dad's job, not because he didn't want to do it, but because it's just not what they did. And I think that there has been changes to how we can see ourselves as men. I think the other thing is that every time you balance that up, there's just that other bit about, well, this is how I see myself as a man. How are other people seeing me as a man? And it's that thing where we all have visions of ourselves and we never know how other people perceive us. It's only sort of like through being through certain things like you alluded to, Matt, a few years ago, that I've just taken a few steps back to what do people think of me? Well, no, that's up to you. That's your business. I'll never change that. What am I happy with? How am I happy? That means that where I've seen certain things in terms of maleness, once upon a time, would I like to be buff? That ain't happening. Do I feel as though the expectation's there? I don't. Does my son? And it's just to help him feel as though he can be comfortable in his own skin. Yeah. That's just reinforcing that you can be perfectly content with how you are. If you want to change anything about it, that's fine. I'll always support and love you. But you don't have to do it for me. You don't have to do it for everybody else. It's just if you want to, for your reasons, kid.
Yeah, like having a range of different role models is like really important, isn't it? So you can see, like, it's the same, like what being a man might mean for you, being a man might mean something different for someone else. It's the same with women, really, isn't it? It's yeah. So we have a statistic here from Mental Health UK. Only 36% of all NHS referrals for psychological therapies are for men. So men are less likely to seek help for their mental health. So I mean, I think that's quite shocking. And like, so in your experience, what are some of the barriers that men are met with when they do open up about their mental health? We'll start with you, Matt, if that's okay.
It's barriers we were speaking about earlier. It's like, how often do men, as a general rule, go to the GP? And then when you ring up the GP, what happens? You have to speak to the receptionist, and most people don't want to speak to the receptionist. And it's nothing bad about whatever the receptionist is. It's how it's being perceived, isn't it? Because for mental health to be seen as a problem, you've got to put it on the table, you've got to put it out there. And most people don't want to put it out there because you feel about being judged, whatever age you are and all that. And then also when you put it out there, you've got to say it, and you don't tell the receptionist that this is going on. You want to speak to the GP. But the receptionist says stop you from getting through if you've got a
the
cold.
gatekeeper, isn't she?
So
How
can you be fixed if you're not being honest about stuff? Some men have trouble with that, and it's about just speaking about it first time. So let's say you're at work or you're in the work environment, and then they've spoken to somebody and they said, "Oh, this is going on in my life," and you're not here to diagnose, but let's say they're having intrusive thoughts and not sleeping. They're eating patterns all over the world, all over the place, and they just can't concentrate. So you might go, advise, I think you might have to go and speak to your GP about something here. But then they've got to repeat what they've just said, and they don't want to say it. So men usually keep to themselves because they think, I've already said it once, and no, I've got to do this, and they don't know which direction they've got to go. And then you might say, maybe you might need therapy. And most men, especially in construction, usually, I'm not being being broad in a big stroke here, guys, but they might go, I'm not doing that. That's another big thing. Or they say, I've done it once and it doesn't work, and then everything's negative, especially when we talk about mental health. So that's the problem. And what they usually do is their own coping mechanism, alcohol, drugs, whatever that can be. And that's how it perceives, and that's how it's seen, isn't it? What people are doing, what they're doing, and then they get punished for whatever they're doing that way. Because from the outside, you know, there's somebody here and they're drinking all the time or whatever that can be.
To them, they might think it's like a lose-lose situation. It's like you either have to open up, which is what they don't want to do, and have to address it, or it's like they go down these other avenues and they get judged. So either way, it sounds like
it's quite difficult, isn't it?
I think, and people, that fear of people not listening and judgment, you know, and it's really, really hard. And I think people can judge without realising doing it at the time, especially with comments like, don't worry, and things will get better, and I comparing. And again, we don't want to hear any of that, do we? When we're feeling at our lowest, all we want is somebody just to be there to listen and be open and to be respectful, regardless of what their own personal thoughts and feelings. Because I think even specialist GPs will have their own opinions about mental health. So that's a barrier as well, I think.
It's an interesting one because it goes back to what you're saying, Matt. Personally speaking, I was happy. Well, no, happy is the wrong word. I could speak to one person to start with. But the thing is because I was that unwell, the energy it had taken to say everything to one person, I couldn't that same day repeat the same thing, because to actually bring myself up to the point where I couldn't think. I was having trouble with coherent sentences. I could basically just say that I needed to go somewhere. Make up your own mind where that was. And it was, so actually to speak to somebody, a receptionist, to say, this is what I'm going through, I need help. And then, right, can you explain? No, I can't. Not because I don't want to. It's because mentally... I'm
trained, yeah.
I've gone, yeah.
Yeah, it's too difficult.
So to actually... The huge amount that it took out of me to say that, it completely depleted what was left, because I hadn't realised, and I don't know how many people do, that you've emptied the tank. You haven't even got fumes left. I don't know where the energy comes from. It was just a spark that was left in the battery that made me sort of like actually realise something's gone. Something bad's gone off. I need to get help. Once I'd done that, the first splurge was there, but then I needed to find a fueling station. And that was sort of like the GP. We actually, when it happened to me, used my wife's work's EAP line. And I'm not going to say lifesaver because that's over dramatising it. But without them and their support then, I don't know whether I'd have how quickly I could have recovered, or indeed if I could have recovered to go back to work again, because that's the other thing that scared the rubbish out of me. Yeah. Once I knew that I couldn't talk and I couldn't express myself, my job had gone. And my wife was such a tower of strength. She just said, don't give two hoots about that. I married you, not your job. And then that enabled me to go forward. And it's just having that safe space where, because I was running out, that we could do that. So it was a little bit more of a phased step process to get help. So it was more timed, and I was able to regenerate, get that fuel back to actually express myself, which I'm not doing that well at the minute, but
I think that's what people don't understand as well when you reach for help in those stages of feeling exhausted, feeling absolutely drained, and actually I really don't want to talk about this now. I've already told you I'm not going to repeat myself again. And sometimes that feeling that you just want to curl up and go away and just leave me alone now because I've told you. And because the fear sets in then, what's going to happen now? Yeah. You know, you're going to tell my work, like you said, and relationships and stuff.
Yeah, and how fortunate was you that you understood that it was your wife's EAP, your Employee Assistance Programme, that you knew that was about as well? Because we have one at our firm as well, which is great, but understanding that it's not just for them, it's for the family as well. How lucky is that? How fortunate is that you understood that?
She said, do you want to use yours? And I said, I can. And she said, well, no, let's use, because it was that little bit of comfort in the detachment.
There was nothing to do with that. Yeah.
Yes, I was going to say
it was
that.
just, it was that
that.
Because it's, your mental health is, I live in my own bubble in my head. That's me. I'll share stuff with different people in my life, but that's me. So to actually start to share with what I see as my core being with anybody is a huge move. So I like to do that with either somebody that I know really well, or more usually somebody who doesn't, because then they can't judge any decisions that I've made.
It's feeling vulnerable. So like we all have different experiences, but a few years ago I sort of had a similar experience where I needed help. And one of the things I think men are terrible at compared to sort of women will just have these conversations, call blimey on WhatsApp, Facebook, how are you feeling? I'm okay, have a chat, go for a coffee. It feels like we as like blokes have to wait until we're on the very last like limb before we actually say something. And for me, I was lucky, and again, I had like a mum and dad who couldn't do enough for me, but they weren't sure how to help because they didn't understand. They didn't know how to help me because, like you say, it's in your own head. And like I took therapy for that first session. I sat there in silence for 45 minutes, and I was very fortunate. I had a good job that I paid for it myself privately, but not everyone's got the luxury of that. And said like the statistic about construction, not everyone's got the luxury of having the expendable money to do that, or they don't even know where to go. And I think that's the problem. And trying to wait for NHS, the waiting lists are terrible, like you said about the GP.
Yeah.
It's
not
just a cycle.
That. Yeah, with the NHS, what you're tending to find now, unless it's trauma specific, so if you're maybe a survivor of a sexual assault or something like that, you'll get offered often one-to-one counselling. Otherwise, it's generally been offered as group work, and people are not told that to start with. And so people have come to me and said, I've waited 8 months and been told I've got to sit in a group. And okay, so that works for some people. It might work once they've done some one-to-one work, but for lots of people, trying to get them to actually encourage them to come and talk to people, I wouldn't be comfortable talking in a group
daunting,
of others.
isn't it?
Yeah, because it's taken you all your strength, and I understand, being a counsellor as well, that it takes an awful lot of strength for people to come and reach out and sit and talk to you. And if my clients want to sit and cry for an hour, I give them that space to do that, because it's probably the only time they've ever been able to do that. Or if they want to sit in silence, whatever they want is okay. And that's what's got to be important with that person, because sometimes it's just about letting them sit and recover themselves a little bit and just feel safe.
Yeah. Can we go back to what you were saying as well? It's when you went to, like, in construction as well, a lot of them can't have time off work. Like you were just mentioned it there. It's like they might be self-employed.
Yeah, so they won't have access to EAP anyway if they're self-employed, will they? And no sick pay. And
there's no sick pay. Even if they're not self-employed, there's no sick pay. Well, if there is, it's gone up, isn't it? £113 a week, I think, or something like that now.
Oh, is that sick
SSP?
pay? Oh, SSP.
Sick pay. That's what I mean. Yeah, but if you are,
Well, yeah, I was going to say, like, so are the channels for opening up and for seeking help? Do you think? Because I've heard this before, actually. Do we think that the avenues for seeking help and maybe the advertisements that is more targeted towards women than men?
There was a report out, I'm sure it's by the Men's Mental Health Forum and the Movember movement, and it's called Mind Your Language. And in that report, so these researchers went around the UK to talk to working men's groups. And one of the things that came out of it is that they think that these services are geared towards women. The language they use, some of the advertisements, it's all geared towards women. So yes, it is, and it is a barrier for men too.
You talk about your saying with language, there's a big thing as well, isn't it? Especially in construction with men. If you say mental health in the construction side, most of them say, they could say whatever, I can't speak for everybody, but they go, mental health, I haven't got that. That's it. Without understanding how much of a big spectrum mental health is. It's also when you're feeling great and on top of the world, or when you've had a slept well, which isn't poor mental illness, but they still see, but they only see it as depression or psychosis or anxiety. It's
as a diagnosed condition, and then that's what stops people. Also, I'm not going to my doctors because if they give me a diagnosis, then what do I do with that diagnosis?
And and I'm not mental. That's what they'll say. I'm not.
It's the same with therapy. When someone mentions therapy, and it's like, "What, you're crazy?" I'm not crazy. Just want someone to talk to. But I've heard that firsthand.
I've suffered with my mental health over the years, and even the names I've been called by my own family. It's insulting. And it leaves scars. So I know what it feels like.
Yeah, that's just ignorance, isn't it? And I think conversations like this do raise awareness. I think that's why it's really important. Because if you don't know about it, you do often misjudge or misunderstand and say mean things.
And I do understand one of the biggest things is that people are afraid, aren't they? They're afraid, especially within families. Sometimes it's like, is it contagious? That's the impression I've got, that they stand back as if you've got something they can catch. And for you as the person at that moment is really, really struggling to be treated that way. And families will abandon family members. Again, I know because I speak from personal experience. So it's really, really hard because, again, this is how a lot of men see it from their point of view, I think. And the guys that I see in my practice, that it's taken them years. Most of the men that I see in private practice are over 50.
Right. So it's taken them quite a while to come to terms with.
And they'll tell me this happened when I was 20 and when I was a kid this happened. And so it's taken them to in their 50s to actually come to therapy to talk about it. And yet if only they were able to reach out as younger men, and life might have been different for them.
The one thing that you touched there that I connected with is the use of the word unknown. And just to use the sort of like the physical injury, when I bust my knee, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, lovely. I know what I'm dealing with. When I broke my brain, whenever, you might not. Well, I'm not the person I was beforehand. If I know what I'm dealing with, I'm more likely to seek help. If I know that it's going to be a certain set time, then I can factor in a recovery. I can understand how that affects not just me, but everybody I hold dear and everything I hold dear in life. Like you both mentioned about the nature of construction industry anyway, and how it goes with the swings and arrows of the economy. When you're looking at yourself, we were talking before we came in here about whether you're spraining your ankle, you're spraining your wrist or something like that. When you're on site, you probably still try and carry on because it's a day's pay. But you knew that you can take ibuprofen, you can put a tubey grip on it. If you've got the weekend, you've got a day off, you just don't do something with your wrist or your ankle. You can't do that with your brain. You can't do that with your mental health. And that's the other thing that can be a barrier. It's the fact is that no one can say to any of us sat around here exactly how long it will take us to get to a point where we'll feel as though we're recovered again. And so it's that huge unknown that will stop a lot of people from, one, am I still going to be me? Will people recognise me as still being me? Will I be able to do what I did before? Do I want to? Can I? If I don't do that, what will I do? There's so many questions that as soon as you open up about your mental health, just start to hit you. And none of us, I was not prepared for saying I wasn't well, to just open up a whole other drawer that was just like the one in my kitchen with different tools in it. So I'd be having to pick a tool, I'd be having to see which batteries worked and which one would make me more me again. And I think that's the other thing that a lot of people find scary, is that you can't put a badge on it, you can't put a time scale on it. And once you've got that uncertainty, how do you deal with that and how it feeds upon itself? And that only works with support. I'm hugely lucky in the amount that my family understood and sort of like looked after me, and a lot of people at work did. I know that I'm very, very lucky.
Yeah. So, I mean, what are some of the positive and negative coping mechanisms that men in particular might use to deal with their mental health?
Mine was drink. I used to, and that was me going down a massive rabbit hole. And it started off as a few beers here. And, you know, I went through some things that lost a lot of people who I absolutely adore. And it's not an excuse. It was just because that was my culture as well. As in, so I'm an ex-soldier, Staffordshire Regiment. I've got to put that out there, guys. Very proud of that regiment. And I was in scaffolding, and I'm coming to scaffolding really because it's the same kind of mentality as you work hard but play harder. You know, have a few drinks. But that's how I used to deal with, you know, dips throughout my life. I know I suffer with severe depression. I'm not on medication anymore, but every now and again I dip. And the way I used to deal with it is go on a massive bender for a few days, you know. And it's, you know, when you don't understand how much we talk about ripple effect, how much it affects life is in my small family. And I'm glad my kids were young, because I didn't realise when I didn't come home on a Thursday night and I might come home on a Tuesday. My ex-wife should have got rid of me years ago, if I'm honest. I wouldn't put up with that, you know. But understanding that it's not an excuse, but I understand now why I was doing it. But when I went down the rabbit hole when I was 38 and a half, it was having a few beers. It started off as a couple going to the pub. In fact, what I was doing, I started buying Hop House 13. I remember, because you used to buy 6-packs. You can't buy it anymore. I remember buying 6 of them and then 2 packs of them, and then I'd be going to the pub and buying them on the way home, and before you know, you're in this rabbit hole going down. And
is it like spiral?
And that's
or can
what
it
it
spiral without you even realising that you're
and
spiraling?
this is it. And it's the culture as well, because men don't talk, they get to the pub. You know, I come when I started doing scaffolding. It wasn't when we was at Linden SUB, but before I used to I know I could get 4 pints down me in at dinner time. On a dinner hour in half hour. But that was the culture. That was when anything was going, maybe stuff was going on because I shouldn't be drinking that much before. But that's what we used to do. And everybody was doing this, you know. So when things are going worse, you just drink more. And you do who you talk to. And, you know, but my coping mechanism's a million times better now. I don't do that. I still like a beer. It's smiling, you know, but I don't drink. If, you know, me personally, I talk about it a lot more. I'm a lot more open. I know how to express myself. When you was on about crying early, mate, I cry all the time. I cried this week at, I don't know if anyone's watched Clarkson's Farm. I'm not going to...
I've not watched the new season yet, no.
Oh, there was this bit where, and it broke my heart, and my son was laughing at me. But, you know, but I'm okay with that. I'm still the same Matt George what I was years ago. But I know it's, you know, better talking. You know, doing things that make it gives you time to look after yourself. I think that's a big thing. What makes you happy?
Yeah.
What you were saying earlier.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
It's I do recognise the drinking. I call my 20s my professional drinking years.
Professional, yeah, I like that.
Because I didn't realise that. Again, part of it was a macho thing. Look at Dan, he's a drinker. Oh yeah, I will stand up all night, every night. And it was, I didn't have to think about stuff. So I was in an environment, you were having a good time because everybody was happy. There was no sort of like downtime in the morning because I was asleep, because I was hungover. So by the time I woke up, the sun was up. Ooh, new day. Oof. And it was that sort of like way of just being. And it's had its effects in certain parts, but I was lucky enough to see a doctor who did a blood test and just went, "You will stop that," and I went, "Yes, I will." And that was the number one thing. And like you say, you didn't have to talk, because all that we talked when we'd had a few was complete rubbish that made us laugh. Yeah. So because we were talking rubbish that made us laugh, we were smiling. So in some ways, doing something that wasn't that productive, as it were, it gave my brain sort of like some type of mixed messages, because the alcohol was numbing something, but I'd be having a laugh. So something was working. So just carried on and on and on until it stopped. And then after that was when, a few years later, I didn't replace the alcohol with something that gave me the same type of buzz. That took until, this is going to sound weird, until my son was born. When he came, and as he started to grow up, that's when that part of me was put to bed. And the more there was somebody else, and that changed how I felt about myself and how I was. And in terms of how that made me cope, it was like, well, I can't go back to being old Dan. New Dan has to try different things and move on.
I think what helps now as well, it's how you are in work as well, because we spend more time at work than what we do at home. So we need to make work a better environment for us to be able to work. I'm very fortunate where I work now. I've got a good support network around me at work. I've got a good support network with my friends out of work. But it's like my boss, Mark Collinson, who's, I've known him years, but he's a real good boss. And like, when we're going through stuff, I'm happy to go and talk to him about it. And because people come to me for support, but you need that in your life. You need to be able to talk about it. And not everybody's that lucky. You know, we're doing something at work called Value Every Voice this week, because it's Health and Safety Week and an award thing. But we're doing that. But it's really important. I'm not just saying it, guys. We like doing these talks here. This is what we need to do. We need to be able to make it more, understand that everyone's going through stuff, and whether or not they believe in stuff, we're all one phone call from our voice, from our situation changing totally.
You spend a lot of time at work, don't you? And if you have to pretend to be something else or something that you're not, that's exhausting. And that adds to the problem, doesn't it?
Yeah. So if we understand a lot of people are going through stuff and they could be helping, you can make it better at work. I mean, what you do as well is, that's what it is. It's about being open about stuff. If you create that environment, it's great. But you have to also understand not everybody's going to feel or believe or get into that way of thought.
Yeah,
believe.
for sure.
You know what I'm trying to say?
It works for some people and it doesn't work for others.
Some people are going to go,
that
you're just saying that.
It's quite interesting what you say there, Matt. It's like I have a group of friends. We've all worked together at different points, and we'll all do not an official check-in, but we'll all ask how each other is every now and again and just keep in touch. And the thing is we've all been through a mental health journey. So it's a bit like a support mechanism. It's there, no judgment. I can say when a day's been naughty word. No judgment.
Yeah.
And they'll say, why has it been naughty word? And I will be able to say, because immediately, as soon as they ask a question, I know that they're prepared for the answer.
Yeah.
And it's
And
having
they've got that time to listen, I think, also.
It's having that permission to actually say what you feel and know that someone's got the time to listen. And if they feel as though they need to just advise or just give a little bit of a guide, then they will. And you know who it's come from and that it's come from a good place, and that you can take it on board. And that type of thing's been invaluable. I'm not going to name check them because I'll get all arrogant about it, but
But it really is good. We talk about that in terms of the mental health first aid training, because you deliver that too, and it's really, really key that if somebody's going to come and speak to you, and I often say, if somebody comes to speak to you, the last thing you need to be doing is come back in 10 minutes to that person, because that person then will be gone. Chances are they'll never come back. And that time they've come to you and tried to speak to you, it's taken them so much courage to come and do that at that point that we have to be prepared to say, yeah, okay, come on, take a seat. Yeah, we might have to make a quick phone call if we've got to be somewhere, but we don't send them away. We physically bring them to us. Come and take a seat. Let me just make a quick phone call, because, you might be expected in a meeting or something, but that's really key. And I think that works with friends as well, because you get those people that ask, how are you doing? But you can tell they're not really interested. Because as soon as you, well, actually, I've just got it, hang on, they're on the phone or something, and you can just tell. And it's so important. I think that's very much a society thing as well, that we see that so many people are buried in their phones that they don't feel approachable. You sat there in the pub and, come out, let's go for a drink, but 20 years ago, maybe, that you go and have a chat round the pub table, maybe. That's girls anyway. But even more women are starting to sit with mobile phones in their hands, that people are becoming unapproachable to talk to.
In terms of like positive coping mechanisms, what about like, I don't know, physical activity or sports clubs or anything like?
We were talking a little bit about that earlier, weren't we? In terms of things like, there's some men's sheds around the country. There's some of these Andes clubs as well with the football and stuff. I've seen locally, they've got these walking football teams as well, so that older guys that aren't physically fit can do the walking football, so they can actually talk and build a bond. But I think anything really, and it doesn't even have to be sports-based. I think what's important to men, because again, aren't we generalising men play sport? So men might want to paint. They might want to do pottery. They might want to sing. I've sang in a choir. We've had lots of men in the choir.
Drama,
anything. So we need to step away from, go and play football, go and play this, go and join a boxing gym, they might want to go and learn to play an instrument, go and learn to cook, anything that they want, and it's giving men that voice in saying, well, actually, this is what I really want to do. And saying, yeah, that's okay, I'll see if I can help you with that.
Yeah, I mean, I like my sport, I like my gym. I think the gym for me, we're talking negative coping mechanisms. One thing I struggled with was because I was working at home and it was COVID time, and my negative coping mechanism wasn't drinking, it was just being quiet and just locking myself away internally. And it must have been very difficult for everyone around me to not understand that I was like putting an act on, because I was always like, my friends all detest, I'm always the joker, the always happy-go-lucky one, but internally I'm just like, I'm miserable, and that was quite hard to like. But all the time, your friends, they do see through you, they're not stupid. My friends would be like, you're not right, what's wrong with you, sort of thing. I got into the gym not so much to get massive and strong, it was just to feel better. And because I was working at home all the time, and I lived by myself at the time as well, I spent a lot of hours between four walls, and it was rough. And you go to the gym and you might just see the same person a couple of days in a row. I was like, oh, you're all right. And that simple, are you all right, that's sometimes it gets you through the day. But so yeah, I think gym and sports, but like you said, definitely it's millions of activities you can do. I did fall in love with cooking a bit. I'm terrible at it. I burn everything, but at least I have a go.
It's an outlet, isn't it? You're still doing it. You're still giving it a go.
3 pans.
Yeah, you lost 3 pans. Who loses pans? How have you done that?
I burnt stuff into the pan. It's gone, like the ruined. But even just like last Sunday, I went on a walk with one of my best mates, and even though you might not say a lot, even like a few words mean a lot, if that makes sense. Like the simple, like, oh, how's your week been, etc. And he'll tell me a few things that's up and down about him, and I'll say a few things that's up and down about me. And you just walking, and just your head kind of clears a bit, and that fog sort of leaves, and that's a walk. Yeah. It's a simple thing.
Well, it's feeling part of something, isn't it, within the community? And like work, we're going back to work, and when you're over, if you feel understood, listened to, and being valued, it's a big thing. So if you're not getting it at work, you need to get it from somewhere else. It's like gym. I used to be in martial arts. That used to be my thing. I know you won't believe it. I used to be between 68 and 72 kg. I used to fight doing K1 and Muay Thai. I've ate myself since then, guys. Right. But that was my thing all the time. But it's also that was another community where it felt. And admittedly, when I was going through stuff, certain people did notice that I wasn't right. My friends who used to run Ryan, his wife, Jenna, she noticed I wasn't right once. But me being a man, because you wear a good mask, that's what you do. You put a good mask on and your friend sees through it. But I remember I remember saying to her, you okay? And I went, yeah, I'm sound. And she went, no, you're not. Something's not right. And I went, she's now, so I took a deep breath, a big sigh. And I went, yeah, I'm sound, because I didn't say anything. But then that was what, maybe I should have opened up, but I didn't, because I'm a man. Whatever that's meant to be, whatever that is meant to be, yeah.
You'd be amazed how much it changes when you ask a friend, oh, how are you? And say, I'm fine. No, how are you? I'm all right. No, how are you? And then suddenly it's opens up, doesn't it? And fireworks.
It's a big, if you trust your gut, isn't it? If you trust that feeling, ask them twice. It's a big thing.
That ask twice,
ask them
it
twice.
is a big thing, isn't it? Because it's easy to say, it's like a reflex almost. I'm fine.
I will say this, don't ask every single person twice, because I'm going to get a nickname. If you go, are you all right? No, are you all right? People are going to go, oh my God, I'm not speaking to you. But it's when you feel it, trust it. It's a real thing.
That's the thing, isn't it? Sometimes if they say, no, it's okay to say, well, do you know, I've just been a bit worried about you. And say, you know, and I think sometimes that's when people realise, actually, you are interested, you do want to know, you have got the time.
It's the realisation that people care.
Yes.
That someone really genuinely cares. Yeah.
Being a good person, which we all are, that's what we're doing. I believe everybody's a good person deep down, you know, and it is, because we all care. It doesn't matter what your job role or what you do in life, we all do things, but you genuinely care. So if you see something, just ask them, are you sure you're okay? Yeah.
So I've got another statistic here. So in 2020, a Chartered Institute of Building report found that 97% of construction workers had felt stressed, 87% had experienced anxiety, and 70% had experienced depression over the past year. So that, I mean, again, I'm quite shocked by that, because the numbers are obviously so high.
When was that, 2020?
In 2020, yeah.
It's going to be a lot higher now.
Yeah, well, exactly. So what do you think is contributing to these statistics? And also, like, what is it actually like working on site, whether you're a construction worker or an engineer, or like, what is that environment like on site? And why do you think that people may struggle in that environment?
I think it's like a pressure cooker, and everyone's a bit raggy, a bit angry, because that's just the way it is, because it's male dominated usually. It's as though everyone's ready to kick off. And I could talk about scaffolders. If you know scaffolders, and very precious scaffolders are. Very precious, as in they don't like you looking at the work if you're not a scaffolder, if you say something about it, if you know scaffolders, they can be that way. And if that's everybody in construction as well, really, on site, and it's already ready for an argument, because that's a normal day. It sounds like we're arguing all the time. So that's the normal day. That's before we put any other stresses on there.
Sounds like it's a very defensive environment before you start on the mental health at all, isn't it?
So then we're always like, you've got pressures of your job, you've got your commute to work, you commute one from work, the way people talk to you. And if you're running the job, you've got to make sure people are coming in. And if they're not coming in, that's another one. And then you've got people above you, then you've got deadlines, then you've got meetings that you don't want to go to. Then you've got everything like this, then you've got problems at home that you might be bringing in, and it's all of this, and that's every day for everybody. And let's say they're working away from home, that's another one that they have to add on to. Well, whether you're okay with working away from home, you get more money, which is brilliant, but eventually you're leaving. If you have got a partner, you're leaving your partner's home with the kids. I can talk from experience. I remember working away from home, and my wife at the time, she used to, because it used to be in the pub, and we used to go to the pub. It wasn't because we wanted to drink, it was because you'd be in these digs and you'd be at the house, where we was a bed and breakfast, but back in the day it wasn't the best. It's a lot better now with my firm, a lot better, but you'd be away from home, and it's either sitting in four walls, not talk to anybody, or you go out, and the only way you want to go is usually a pub. It's an excuse, but that's where you all are. But then you'd ring back home, and then they're at home with the children, and the kids are playing up, and then, you're in the pub again? So you're having a good time, but you're not. You're in there because of this, and then you have all of this, and the money's good, but you're working away, and you might be travelling back on a Friday, and then you're travelling back Sunday night or early Monday morning. So you're not at home a long time, and then and that goes on week by week, and
it's a lot of pressure, really, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's making me go like that, and I'm not even in there
it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot.
You know?
And what about, like, I don't know, what is, like, is there stigmatizing language on that? That doesn't seem like that's a place to open, like a safe, might not feel like a safe space to open up.
So there's this thing that we used to, the graffiti wall on the mental health first aid, and I used to think it was, and I still think it's great when we use it now and again, I still bring it in, but it's about negative and positive words and phrases that when you use the words for mental health. On the negative, what it used to be, there used to be lists, especially when you're working with people in construction, there used to be lists of all these probably not very nice words. And those words would probably be how you speak to somebody in the morning when you're saying hello. And there was he wasn't meant as negative, but that's what it is straight away. And if there was anything perceived to be a bit weak in whatever that could be seen as, you'd have the big taken out of you. And that's all on site. And it's better now, but it's still got a long way to go.
It's a lot to deal with, isn't it? Especially if you're already struggling.
Yeah. I've also worked in an environment where on site, because I have worked on site myself, where the managers actually said, I'm the last person you need to speak to about mental health. This was to a group of 160 workers on site. And when just speak to Vicky, and I was just, oh God, you've just told all these guys on this side that you're just not interested.
Yeah.
And you're their manager. You manage this site.
It's also like hard. Maybe they would feel more comfortable reaching out to their male manager. As a man, you might feel more comfortable opening up to it.
But the issue there also came from, with this company, it came higher up the chain because this was a specific event where they're on site, they were dealing with certain so health and safety and all sorts of things. And mental health was one of them. And this guy had a guide he had to follow. And he sat with me and said he's doing this. And I said, well, do you want me to do that bit, being as I'm the one that's experienced here? It's while I was doing my training to be a counsellor. And he said, yeah, that'd be great. And then it was a couple of days later, he came to me and he said, head office has said, you can't, I've got to, because I'm the manager. So this came right from head office. You think, so those people in the office haven't connected that actually he's not a specialist, he's not particularly interested in this area, he's a guy. But because he's the manager, he's got to do the talk. It just didn't make sense. So again, it's not just on the site itself, but how is it being managed in terms of instructions feeding down to managers and staff? You know, what are people thinking that are behind the scenes that don't work on the front line with all of these guys? And how, it was a disaster. It really was a disaster. And I just really felt for all these guys. I thought, how are they going to feel?
Yeah.
So, open up to anybody. Yeah.
Yeah. Another statistic here from 2021 said there were 6,319 suicides registered in the UK, of which 507 were in construction alone. So that's average of 2 people taking their own life every working day in construction. And that's from Mates in Mind. So that's a lot to hear, isn't it? So why do you think the construction industry has such a high rate of suicide and mental health issues?
It's because what we've all been speaking about here when we're saying these pressures. And so it's all we was talking earlier. What is a man? What am I? So whenever I do anything, I was talking to you earlier when I say, who am I? Who am I? Who's George? That is my nickname, guys. But so who am I? So when I talk about stuff, I talk about martial arts. I started doing when I was about 7.5. All the way, I've done lots. I've done Shokan Karate, I've done English kickboxing. I joined the army at 17.5. I come out when I was 23. I did a bit of company boxing when I was in there, but I come out, I started doing martial arts again, and I was becoming construction, man's man. I've always been great, and then there's also them pressures of how you're meant to be, whatever that's meant to be, whatever's perceived. So what am I? Nobody knows about my upbringing when it was cousin. My upbringing wasn't the best. That's why I started doing martial arts. I was taught, when you was talking about earlier, Jim, when you were talking about fathers learn stuff from there. My dad was, domestic violence. I'm not getting into it, but, wife and child, but really bad he was. And that's what it was growing up for me. And I'm the youngest of all the siblings. The closest one to me is 9 years older to me. And then my oldest brother is 17 years older. So talk to people who, when we was talking about who do you talk to, I would never speak to them. And I'm close to them. And if I spoke to my older brother, he would have took me to the pub, which probably wouldn't be the best thing to do. John, God bless him, because he go, I don't know what to do. But it's all these extra pressures that we have, and it's like, what is being a man? I'm not meant to feel what you feel. I'm not meant to be this person. I'm meant to be this. I've got to be the strong type. I've got to be strong for the wife. I've got to be strong for the children. But eventually, it drives you down, because that's why people don't know where to go. It could be debt, gambling. There's all these other pressures or what people do, and we just don't talk. And that's why it's because we can't talk about it.
And if you take all of that from how probably most men feel onto a construction site, then it's not surprising that the numbers are so high, is it?
I'm only here because my friends noticed I wasn't right. Else I wouldn't be here. I was one of these stats. I never spoke to it at all. And I was very fortunate that some people did notice and they passed it on and spoke to me at the end of the day. And that's why I'm here. Them statistics, you know, I don't like stats, but because of people, aren't they? And then when you look at them, they can be misconstrued and put to other ways. But it's still too many people dying, you know, and it's just too many. And all because of what we've spoken here today, we just don't converse, we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? Have you ever worked like on site or anything with?
I haven't probably got as much site experience as yourself, but what about the scary thing is that you two sat there, and about the statistic with 2 people every day. If it wasn't for the right channels, you might not be here on the sofa today. Like it's just it's terrifying, to be honest. And I think this question kind of sums back with everything we've talked about, that a man's purpose, or what is a man? What is it to be a man? Is it, like you said, our fathers, grandfathers, their idea of what a man was you go out and provide, breadwinner. Well, most of the people I see now are sat by themselves in a pub, drinking themselves to death. So is that really what a man is? Isn't what I think a man is. I said I'm very, very lucky that I had a mum and dad, and my dad taught me what a man was. It was be respectful, loving, care, listen, you know, have a laugh. Yeah, he was still a manly man, you know. He didn't really. I've never seen him cry. Don't think anyway, but. He's put the right teachings to me, so I'm very lucky that when I when I was in a bit of a downward spiral, straight away I knew I could go to people, and I'm very, very lucky. But yeah, I think there needs to be a new definition of what is a man, not this patriarchal 1970s version of just work, go home, get your tea on the table. It's not the way to do it.
What measures do employers with high levels of construction workers and men need to have in place for supporting their colleagues? Like Dan, I know you said earlier about you used your wife's EAP. So what are some of the things that employers can do to support men specifically and construction workers as well?
I think the thing is one of the key things that I've sort of like heard from everybody here is we're talking. I don't think any of us is afraid to say anything. How do you replicate that? That's the key. The other thing is when we talk about being a man, and we were talking beforehand, Josh talks to his friends about different bits and bobs. I talk to some of my friends, but I know which friends to talk to. I know which people at work to talk with. That's something that is, you can't take something that's personal and put a corporate cap on it. And it's
like if you want soul.
It's sort of like looking to see the Australians' mateship. Where you have true mateship in a working environment, it doesn't have to be men with men, men with women. I'm quite lucky. I work in a very mixed workplace nowadays. It wasn't when I first started. It was men, and we'd have some great competitions that I will not talk about. But it smelt. And that was fine. That was one thing. But again, very male-orientated environment. You talked about things in one way only. Got certain things done, maybe, not other things. As the workforce changed, the way that I behaved did, the way that we talked about things changed. It happened over time. One thing that I've noticed, my son and his generation are a hell of a lot more open than mine. A hell of a lot more. And I wish that I had the outlook that he's got when I was his age. I wish that I'd have the confidence in myself, who I am, and my relationships, and how I thought about myself and my place in the world that he does. I've never met Matt before. I've never met Josh before. We're all sharing stuff. What's not good about that?
It's to see it's okay, isn't it? It's okay to do that.
That's it. And the thing is we're all showing vulnerabilities. Now, 10 years ago, no, I'm not walking through the door.
Yeah.
I'm not coming in here.
Yeah.
You can send me an email. I'll send you one back. No, that's not me. I won't give two hoots. But in order to get to a place where people can feel as though they're not strange, they're not outlanders, they're not saying anything that's different or that anybody else hasn't felt at some point, we need to be more open about how we feel. And it's took me a long time to get to me and being comfortable with being me. It's a privilege that I've got this far. And if I share being me and somebody takes the fact that it's okay for them to be them and to say how being them feels, then some of the rubbish I come out with has been worthwhile, hasn't it?
You're saying 6 years ago. Yeah, we can go, but yeah, you're right, about 10 years ago, but I wouldn't have been speaking about this. Look how far, but it's also understand, John, when we're asking people to be open, but also not making it about them. As in, well, I've been through that and I've never felt that.
I've had that one.
Yeah, yeah.
But not from other sources where, your problems are one about my problems. Well, it's the only thing. Just because you can withstand more than I can doesn't mean my problem's any less than yours.
Yeah, that's it. It devalues you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
As an individual.
Yeah, and people say that as well, don't they? Sorry, where people do it to themselves. They devalue when they're saying, "Oh well," but someone's got it worse than me.
Yeah, we often do that as well.
You've got to be happy. Go, mate. No, I feel a bit crap now. I'm going through some badness.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to do that. And when people, you need higher up and lower up to be able to. It's not about you, and it's not your job to fix it.
Imagine if someone said that the other way around, like, "Oh, why are you happy about that? Someone's probably got more than you. Why would you be happy about just that?"
wouldn't do that,
You
would you?
never. You would never. I would never say that to someone. So why is it the other way?
And it
I've never
feeds
thought about
into
it like
that
before.
stigma as well, isn't it? And we're going to be judged because, like we say, there's somebody who was worse off than us. But actually, we've all got our own stories in this room, and nobody's ever walked in our shoes, and nobody can ever know how we have felt as individuals living our lives and going through some of the traumas that we've gone through and surviving some of those and actually being in some of those really dark places. Nobody, even somebody else that's suffered like us, can never know on an individual basis how that can feel.
I think when it comes to how workplaces can deal with it, I think we've all got a part to play. Where we're talking about the younger generations and slightly older generations. I think
Nice looked at you then.
I think we've all got a point to play because myself and like Alex sort of thing, we might be a bit more caring, a bit more that and we can give them teachings across. But it's also like yourself, you're incredibly brave at sharing your story today. People of your age and other parts might want to do that, and it's up to you and like yourself to make it seem just blimey commonplace. Like if you go on site, if you go on site and you have a toolbox talk which talks about the safeties on hazards and sites that you might hurt yourself physically, why isn't it just a simple toolbox talk?
Yeah.
For a chat.
Yeah.
Simple.
And it is that thing, I was talking to somebody the other day, if you cut your leg, break your arm, you put it in plaster, all this sort of thing, but your brain is part of your body. And if your brain is hurting in some way, and language, which is really stigmatising, is the mental health or the poor mental health, all of this sort of thing we hear, that's what people run for the hills when they hear it. But they don't seem to understand that your brain does an awful lot for your body and for your mind. It's a functioning organ in us, isn't it? And we need to look after that, just like we'd look after the broken arm as well. It's no different. And this is why we need to try and break down these barriers and move away from stigma and accept that actually it's like, you've done something at work and that's hurt your arm. Well, yeah, society, life and everything I'm going through is really hurting my brain at the minute. And I need to take a bit of a break from this. And for some, it might be medication. And for others, it might not be, and mental health isn't always about, I think people get stigmatised in that, again, going back to the diagnosis and what does that mean? So it all feeds back into the stigma. What does the diagnosis mean? What's this going to mean for me? All of this. And we need to start normalising it in actually how many of people in society don't have poor mental health, because I think there's an awful lot of people that do, but that doesn't mean it's a diagnosis of depression. You know, that dark moment could last for a couple of days and then everything's okay again. But for those couple of days, it can be a very bleak, dark time where you still need that help and support to deal with that. Whereas others, well, you were saying you have suffered with depression at times. So we're all different. We can all cycle around these things. And again, it's going through that continuum, isn't it, with Mental Health First Aid England. We can all start off at different points in it and move around, but it's stigma that's going to keep us stuck.
It's very interesting there how you mentioned diagnosis. And at one point, I've had depression. Don't know if I still got it. Another point, I've had stress and anxiety. Don't know if I still got it. But what I tend to sort of like look upon was what I call my event, which happened back in 2017, which was either complete burnout or a nervous breakdown. I don't know what to call it, so it's just something happened. And it's the other thing is, if I can't explain to myself that something happened, it makes it difficult for people to understand, well, something happened. Oh, well, what happened? Right. Well, I can't give it a name, but I can tell you what happened and how I felt. And sometimes it's where I've shared that with a couple of people that I've known, that then it just like, oh, that was mine. And it just helps that. But again, it's sometimes labels are lovely when you want to label things. Compartments are lovely when you want to put some things in a compartment. But quite a lot of my personal mental health journey has been somewhere where, well, look at me, I can't fit in a box. So it just seeps over the sides. Don't take that image to bed with you. So, and it's sometimes that doesn't help when I'm trying to explain so that somebody can possibly think about how
they need to put it in a box, don't they? They need to do something with it.
That's the incredibly scary thing of when people throw around words like depression, that it's not always just so black and white.
No, it isn't.
Like I said, when I had a bit of a downturn a couple of years ago, I didn't get a formal diagnosis from a medical professional, but I sort of sought out some help from therapy, and they sort of put these terms out a bit, and it was just a bit. I just didn't feel right sitting with a term like anxiety, depression, but I just had a similar thing to you. I just kind of had a brain fog. I feel like it's like a cloud.
Yeah. And on the other hand, some people need that diagnosis or they want that label because, again, we're all different. And for them, they can maybe make sense. So if you tell me I've got depression or I've got anxiety, I can go and look that up, which is what people do, self-diagnose, don't they? They'll go look at Google. Oh, yeah. And I have people come to me saying, oh, well, I've got this. And well, let's not necessarily label you with something because I don't like to do that either. You know, it's not my role, isn't to tell people you're suffering with anxiety. I don't have the assessment tool to do that because your GP does and I don't. So it's not part of my role as a counsellor unless you've got that tool, but it's not something I'd see. And if I suspect something else is going on there, I might say, look, I think you might benefit from having a chat with the GP and leave that to them. Yeah. And that's what you have to be, that freedom.
I think the best one was I had a downturn a couple of years ago and the GP just said, you need a break. I struggled with giving myself permission because I didn't want to let people down. And that's always been the worst part of any time when I've not been right, when I felt unwell. It's the last part for me to actually get anywhere is that feeling of somebody has to give me permission, else I'll feel like the world's biggest heel for letting everybody down. And that's for me where the GP sort of like just give me the hand on the shoulder and just basically like a manager in a football game, you're going to have to come off and I'm going to have to get a substitute on. You need a break. Your
health professional has said you need a break.
Yeah.
Then it's okay.
And so I didn't,
to you.
On that last time, I didn't need a label. They would have given me one. Sorry. But they just sort of like said, no, you're knackered. there's 2 weeks, come back in 2 weeks. If you need a third, there's a third. And the other thing, that's the privilege that I've got in my part of construction and engineering. I've got a huge support package that means that I can do that. I still get a mortgage paid.
And that's it, going back to what we said about
Yeah.
earlier, lots of people in construction.
A lot of people haven't got that. So whereas for me, that's a permission, to a lot of other people, that's I've now officially told you that you shouldn't be working.
Yeah.
So whereas...
That will also stop them going to the GP.
Yeah. So
because
whereas
you don't want to be told that.
Yeah.
But it's like, so when we talk about depression, so like when I say I experience depression, but I'm not depression, it's not an excuse for me to, you know, if I still don't go into work when I'm feeling deep now, it's me. You know, that's not, it's because I've got depression, but that's not the reason. It's because I've not decided to get up this day or do something like that. So you are right with the labels. But when we're talking about, so when I went off them rails and it was really bad, I didn't know there was all this support for us, and I was very lucky at work. They helped me in other ways, so I had to go on the sick. So I was getting paid back then. Sick pay back then was £93, £96, something like that. I didn't realise what supports was out there, even though there was there. So I had to go on the sick, and I needed it. I had to ring the GP because I was done. So I met my friend Ainsley in a coffee shop. He got me a croissant. Now, the scaffolders eat croissants. I do say it all the time. You hear me saying them? Beautiful, by the way. I eat them all the time. But he was talking to me, and that was the first time I was able to express what was going on. And this was going on for about 1.5 years, and I hadn't spoken to anybody about any of this. Nobody. Because I was a man's man, whatever that's meant to be. And I was broken. I was at that time. When I went to meet him for he rang me up when I was on the way to go and die by suicide. So that's what was happening. And people had noticed I wasn't right. And this is what I'm saying, well, you need good people in your life, or people to notice, whatever their own thoughts on mental health or suicide are, it doesn't matter. They just pass it on knowing that I wasn't right, George wasn't right, and he passed it on to this individual. And then he rang me up saying, you want to go for a coffee? I said no at first. And then he said, look, now people have noticed she's not been right. So I met him at a coffee shop. And then I was saying, got me the croissant, which is beautiful. But I didn't know how to express what I was saying. I didn't call it, because I didn't know it was depression either then. I thought people who had depression was just pulling a fast one. I didn't realise it's a real illness. I didn't know that. And I remember being in the coffee shop talking to him. It was the same as I was half shouting at him, if I'm honest, because I didn't know how to express what I was going through. I remember saying, I should not be feeling this. But from that, this is where I went. So he was in a position where he could get help and like change, because he's the guy who set it up with the firm now where I work. He was the one who got me. I got my own therapy. Like you was talking earlier, when I went to the GP, I got a conversation with the GP, and 13 weeks later, even though I said I didn't like talking to people, would you believe it? And they got me group therapy. And I'm like, but I'd already got my own therapy because my work was paying for it, which was great. I had a good GP. I was very fortunate. She was great, Dr. Barr, who was heavily pregnant, but she used to see me every 2 weeks. And so I had that support, and I felt very privileged. And not everybody gets all of this. I was very lucky, guys. Not everybody is as lucky as me. But I'm happy to talk about it now. So sorry, but it's like everything you're talking about there. I get it, but a lot of I had to go on the sick, and I could not afford to go on the sick, but I had to. I know I was ill. I was that ill. I thought my children would be better off without me. Breaks my heart, that does, guys. You know, and I say all the time, because I'm very close to my children and they know what's going on. But that's how ill I was. I thought they'd be better off without me. And yeah, so yeah. I just thought pretty out there.
Do you think your experiences have led you to the role that you work in now at Linden SGB? And just tell us a few things about the positive sort of initiatives that you implement now so that people have a safe space in construction, particularly men.
So yeah, so we've set up with Ian before, and Ian's left. He works on and off at Lighthouse Charity now. And so it has helped me, because I am one of the typical guys on the ground, and a lot of them are surprised when they hear me. So when we talk about going on sites, we talk what you were saying there earlier, Joe. I also go and do my talk, which is a bit longer than what I've tried to put it down here, guys, and it's out there anyway, about what I went through and why I am who I am. And when I say, who am I? Am I this, a man's man? But I'm more than that. We're all more than that. Whatever that aspect is, we're all more than whatever we're perceived to be. So I go inside, I call them behind the bike sheds, talk, we'll have a little chat and I'll tell them about my experience and say what we can offer. So at Linden SGB, I'm a mental health first aid instructor for the adults and the youth, 2 day, 1 day and half day. I'm a suicide first aid instructor as well for the 1 day and the half day light. I'm a CIS instructor, which is applied suicide intervention skills training. But it's more than that. It's about being a support and offering them a place for people to come and talk. Yes, I'm busy. Yes, I go all around the country, but I absolutely enjoy what I do because when you were talking about there is about life experiences, people can get with me. I could talk to people on the ground, whether you're a scaffolder, cleaner, to your CEO of a company. I would just talk. I don't change who I am. I can't change who I am. You hear my accent. I'm a local lad from around here, and I do love my accents. But however, it's about connecting with people. That's what all this is about. You know, being good. It's about connecting. We're all talking and we're being honest. It's about connecting. It's about you've got to connect. Even down in London, yeah. So yeah, that's who I am. But I think that's always, all joking aside, but it's about that. It's about, we're talking about worst case scenarios here, but it's about us all just being good people talking to each other. And that's where we make an environment, even at work and anything else, that we can just talk. Not everybody's out to get you. Not everybody's out to try and, because I'm not. I know there are, but not everybody's like that. I've been all around this world and I've seen goodness in places where you wouldn't expect it, and when you're back at home, everyone will help you if you need it, and that's what it's about, helping. I've all got 5 minutes to help anybody. Did I go off track there again? Did I?
No, absolutely not.
I just keep talking, don't I? Sorry.
No, I think, basically, in a nutshell, it's about raising awareness. It's about talking, breaking down the stigma, opening up, all those kind of things is exactly what everyone's been doing here today.
So I will add in there, because you asked about work. We're Linden SUV. They let me do this, and we go out and we're very adamant about talking, make sure we're all here for each other, for any level. I'll bring the people up and just ask if they're okay, because I know whatever's going on at work, whatever level that is, just to make sure they're okay, because I know them busy. I'll say with Stuart Dougal in Glasgow, I know I'll ring him up and see if he's all right. He just laughs at me. If I can understand him half the time, sorry Stuart, no I can. I'm joking. But you just check in with it. It takes nothing to check in with somebody. You haven't got to be a mental health first aider, trained in anything, just to go, are you okay? What we were saying earlier, are you okay? Sorry, I went off on one again, didn't I? Well.
No, that was good. I mean, thank you so much, guys. I know it's been a bit of a heavy conversation, but I just think it's been so important. I feel like hopefully I feel inspired by hearing you all talk so openly about your stories and your struggles and your experiences. And I hope that people who are watching this at home will feel the same and will be encouraged to open up and just to normalize this entire discussion. So thank you so much. It's been really good.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone at home who's joined us for the Engineer Exchange. Keep an eye out on our YouTube and Spotify channels for more content coming soon.